That's no good. Let's try this one more time, because this is leading somewhere. All right, that's much better. So there are a couple of reasons why I started with this, and one of the reasons I restarted is because I didn't have the volume down on my own browser. So I thought, why is it doubling up? Why is it doubling up? So, word to the wise. My name's Jeffrey Saddoris, and this is number 6 in this live call-in experience. And as you just heard, anything can happen because we're live. So why am I playing this somewhat orchestral, swingy kind of intro? A couple reasons. Number one, I've been watching a lot of Bond movies lately, kind of going back and rewatching the Daniel Craig era of Bond movies, and I love Casino Royale. It's actually one of my favorite Bond movies, full stop. And so it kind of reminded me of a Bond intro. The other reason is something much bigger and much more exciting, and I have to go back a couple episodes to explain. I tried the music that I've been using on the show so far is all Creative Commons. I've tried to choose licenses that are okay to share alike. If you're not familiar with Creative Commons is kind of an alternative, I guess, to copyright, where you can set your own parameters or set a number of parameters with regard to how your music, or actually anything really, this show can be released under Creative Commons, or artwork can be released under Creative Commons. Anyway, you get to decide how that work gets used, and you can decide whether someone can use it commercially, non-commercially. If they change it or make derivatives, then you have to note where those changes were made. There are attribution licenses. Anyway, I try to play by the rules always, and use things where I'm able to use them. And on episode, I think it was episode 3, I got a couple copyright claims on YouTube. Now, first thing I do when I see things like that is panic, because I try to play by the rules and I try to do the right thing, but copyright is a very strange area, and there's something that a lot of people cite called fair use, which is still really kind of a gray area, because judges have ruled on either side of what is and isn't fair use. So it's still kind of a gray area in terms of what you can and can't do with things and how you can use them. And anyway, so long story slightly shorter, there are two things on YouTube. There's a copyright claim and a copyright strike. A copyright strike is the bad news. That's not the good thing. Well, none of them are really good, but copyright strike is much more serious. The way I understand it and the way it's been explained to me, if you get 3 copyright strikes, then I don't know if it's an automatic thing, but they can terminate your channel. And whereas a copyright claim is someone saying, hey, we own the copyright to this, and you can leave it up. It doesn't affect your channel. It's not a strike against the channel, but you can't monetize the video or whatever you're doing with it, which is not an issue for me because I don't monetize anything anyway. But still, I wanted to address it. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is how music fits into this show. So what I ended up doing was I looked into a few different licensing services. And I'm sure you've seen some of the Music Bed is one. There are a handful of these out there. And the one I was looking at was Artlist. And artlist.io is the URL. And one of the reasons that I was looking at them in particular is because they seem to have, some of the other services seem to be more geared toward background music for film and video. And that's great. Artlist has all of that in spades. I mean, their library is phenomenal. But what they also have is pop songs, rock songs, funk, jazz. I mean, kind of you name it, they've got it. And they had a really great library. So I reached out with Sean's help. Thank you, Sean. He had a contact that I could reach out to. And I reached out and told them who I was and what I kind of wanted to do, what I was trying to do, not only here, but in the future with some projects that I've kind of been thinking about, and asked if there was any opportunity to collaborate or to partner up in some way. And they were very kind and reached back out. And long story short, they said yes, and they said we'd love to. We'd love to see where this goes. And so for the foreseeable future, and unless it's otherwise noted, all of the music that you will hear in the coming episodes is going to be courtesy of Artlist.io. And what they've done is pretty incredible. You can search by genre, you can search by mood, you can search by instrument. There's a ton of stuff out there. And it actually made, believe it or not, it made the show, kind of prepping for this show, a little more of a challenge, because I've got this massive list. I'm like, oh, I want to use this. Oh, wow, I could use this. I can use this. Fantastic selection. Anyway, and let me be clear about, I don't like doing ads. I've never really wanted to do ads or promotions. You're never going to hear a stamps.com jingle or read here. I only will talk about something, or maybe approach someone if I believe in the product, or if it seems like there's something that can come out of it. Because this is a tool, right? Any of these things are tools. And if the tool is such that it inspires you to take your work in a different direction, maybe a direction that you couldn't have gone in before, and it's intuitive and it kind of piques your curiosity and your creativity, I'm in. And I think so far anyway, that's exactly what's happened with Artlist. So in the show notes moving forward, you'll see links to the songs that I'm using. If there are sound effects that have been used, which aren't going to be in any of the normal episodes, but that I'll get to that in a minute. There'll be links. And if you sign up, I get a few bucks from it. You get an extra 2 months on top of whatever you sign up for. So you get another 2 months free. I think it's going to be a good thing. And, if it's something that you're interested in, if you're a podcaster, if you're a filmmaker, a YouTuber, you might find it useful and you might see some good stuff in there. So that's a good piece of news that I was really excited about. So thank you, Artlist, for welcoming me, and I'm very excited to see what we can do. Which brings me to the next thing, and that is I want to do some sort of Halloween-y, spooky kind of episode. And I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. I've reached out to a couple people to see if we can brainstorm and collaborate. I thought about maybe reading maybe like a Poe story, or doing like a table read of some sort of spooky thing. That might work. I've reached out to people asking, especially people in other countries, asking if there were stories that they were told as children. Are there folk tales that you know that you'd be willing to share? And, maybe have several people kind of chime in and read some of these things. We can set it to music. We can do some effects. And if you can't be here, maybe you could pre-record it and we transfer it to me or something, or put it up in Dropbox, and I can cut it into the show. So I'm throwing it out to you. If you've got ideas, if you've got suggestions of something that you'd like to do, I've got a few things that I'm still working on, but I'm absolutely open to suggestions. I'd love it to be some sort of community or collaborative kind of thing. So that's that. I don't know what it's going to be called yet. Maybe, I don't know. We'll figure it out. So we can talk about it today if you want. When you call in, I'll open up the phones just a minute. 202, oh geez, what's the number again? 539-0209, or you can Skype me at Saddoris. So last week we were talking about, I just kind of want to go through something real quick. Last week we were talking about Eddie Van Halen and his passing. And in the week since, I've been reading and watching some of the various tributes that are going on around the web. And it's gotten me thinking about music, and specifically musicians. So I want to throw this out there, and if you want to talk about it, feel free to call in. Maybe you've got some interesting insights on it that I'm not seeing, or we can just kind of go a little deeper. But one of the videos that I watched was an interview with Eddie, and I don't remember when it was from. I have the feeling that it was post rehab, post haircut, so maybe in the early 2000s, maybe. And I think didn't he go to rehab? I think he did. I'm not sure, but I think I remember reading that he did. Anyway, there was an article called "The Last Guitar God," and it got me thinking about how few there are of those types of musicians at Eddie's level now, or at least that we know of. There may be a bunch of people out there that just haven't gotten the recognition, but I feel like when I was growing up in the late 60s, early to mid 70s, we were in sort of a golden age of musical talent, especially rock music, right? You had, drummers like John Bonham and Ginger Baker and Neil Peart, and amazing bass players, Chris Squire from Yes, Bootsy Collins, John Paul Jones, Geddy Lee, of course, from Rush. And then guitar, there were a ton of really phenomenal guitar players, right? Hendrix, Clapton, Buddy Guy, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Chuck Berry, Mark Knopfler, my personal favorite, Dave Gilmour, and, the list goes on, right? And there were a few people that I knew of, and that maybe there were more, but there were a few people that I knew of that could play a ton of different instruments, even though they may have been known for one instrument. John Entwistle, Todd Rundgren, Paul McCartney, who famously played every instrument on his first solo album. And in fact, McCartney may be the first one of those people that I was aware of anyway. And so all of this got me thinking about modern music, like in the last 10, 15, even, 20 years, and how there doesn't seem to be as many new, young, iconic sort of monster musicians. And maybe that's true for other types of art as well. Maybe some of these things are cyclical. Or the other side of it is I could be completely full of shit and I'm just not aware of some of these people. But I can't think of too many that are in that kind of realm. I mean, Prince, certainly, Trent Reznor, PJ Harvey, maybe. She plays a ton of instruments. And one guy that's absolutely blowing my mind consistently is Jacob Collier. If you don't know Jacob, I'll put some stuff in the show notes. He is an absolute monster of a musician, and not just in performance, but also in theory and in influence. And, I've never seen him live, but from what I've read and been told, he's sort of the musician's musician where, Herbie Hancock goes to see him, Quincy Jones goes to see him, like that kind of thing. And so I thought that might be kind of fun to talk about. If there are people out there that because I certainly love learning about new musicians and new artists, and it doesn't really matter if it's music or some other genre or discipline. I love learning about it. So maybe I'm just not aware of some of these things, and I'd love to become aware of them, because it's all inspiration. It's all sort of input that filters through each one of us and then into our own art, right? So all of these things are kind of good things to become aware of and kind of sink into. So why don't I hush for a minute and play a tune, and feel free to call in 202-539-0209. This is a terrific tune, and it's not the kind of tune I would normally listen to, but I'm so glad I found it, and it's taken me off in another direction. This is Good by Above Envy. Here we go.
It's too late now to turn around and back again. I made my bed and now I lay my head in it. And I'm sorry I'm not perfect, but I knew that I wouldn't be. I guess it's for the best, the worst in me. I'm no good at being good, but I never said I was. And I feel misunderstood, 'cause I'm trying hard to love. I'm sorry, my actions, they haunt me, and I'll never live it down. I'm no good at being good, but I never said I was. You call my bluff, I won't pick up, I let it ring. Record your voice so I can listen back again. Sorry, I'm not perfect, but I knew that I wouldn't be. I guess it's for the best, the worst in me. I'm no good at being good, but I never said I was. And I feel misunderstood, 'cause I'm trying hard to love. I'm sorry, my actions, they haunt me, and I'll never live it down. I'm no good at being good, but I never said I was. So do you wanna take me back? All of our broken plans, so we can start again. Won't turn down a second chance, I'm too selfish for that. I let you fall again, now that you know that. I'm no good at being good, but I never said I was. And I feel misunderstood, 'cause I'm trying hard to love. I'm sorry, my actions, they haunt me, and I'll never live it down. I'm no good at being good, but I never said I was.
Man, I love that song. Sorry about the levels at the beginning. It's tricky getting different tunes, different levels. They're recorded at different volumes, and I didn't have time to go through and listen to everything to make sure I was at the right spot.
Do you have a limiter that like kind of everything goes through, so it can't go past a certain level?
Yes, but in this case, it was too quiet. So, hey, on the phone with me right now, here, live, my friend Patrick Shipstad, otherwise known as Patty Whack. What's going on?
I've been trying to get through to win the concert tickets. Did I win?
You did. Actually, it's a rally more than a concert.
It's not a rally I have to actually physically run in.
Yeah. What's going on? How are you?
I'm doing fine.
I was hoping that you would call in and listening to that rant, because you've got a pretty deep musical knowledge as well. And am I off base? Has music changed in the last 20, 30 years? Do we have the same number or a relative number, the same kind of monsters, or is there a trend? Is it cyclical?
Well, I think maybe some of the people you've referenced are part of what you might even consider like classic rock, or people who have really stood the test of time. I mean, we still have Aerosmith, we still have AC/DC, we still have these bands with amazing guitar players that are iconic. I mean, Eddie Van Halen, of course, is in a class by himself. But you still have people like Steve Lukather,
yeah, sure,
who has has a radio presence. But then there's of course and there's giants in every genre. They just may not be at the forefront. I mean, there may be amazing flamenco guitar players that I have no idea who they are, or
right.
Jazz players or whatever. I mean, when I think of virtuosos, I mean, other than Eddie, I mean, you think of Joe Satriani and Steve Vai, Prince, of course, for me above all,
right?
And people like Jack White, who's highly, touted as a great multi-instrumentalist,
right,
so to speak. But I when I think about like music today, it's been quite overshadowed, with, I don't want to say like necessarily hardcore EDM, but the personas and the actual, like the people playing instruments has in the newer bands, I think, have gone a little to the wayside. Again, other than the ones with the staying powers that we grew up with,
right.
We're a little older,
right?
But I think there was some people kind of got excited when they heard Greta Van Fleet, and they were like, oh, somebody's bringing back the old, real rock and roll sound.
Right.
I wouldn't consider them, amazing musicians, but in terms of like who's out there as a new band making noise and like, oh man, this is quite the up and comer. They're out there. I mean, there's some that I'm thinking of right now that, of course, I can't remember their names, of amazing guitar players that are out there, but they're not necessarily associated with a band.
Right.
Some of them are just doing their own instrumental tracks, and you can find them on YouTube. But nobody that I think is like on the tip of anybody's a collective tongue.
Right.
Like,
and I'm not. Believe me, I'm not saying that there aren't any talented musicians out there. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Oh yeah.
Nor am I conflating good or popular, good with popular, because there's certainly no shortage of popular music. But I'm talking about that sort of technical brilliance that Clapton had, that Mark Knopfler has, that those kinds of people. And I think I guess what I'm wondering is where's the 15-year-old Kurt Cobain, or where's the 17-year-old Eddie that's out there doing something that we haven't seen or heard or felt before. That's that, and maybe it's out there and I just haven't seen it. I hope that it is.
I think they're woodshedding right now. I was hearing a few years ago people saying, guitar is coming back, and I mean, despite maybe some of these Gibson and other people hurting a bit, that I think it will come around, I just don't think they've popped up to the surface yet. I don't really know exactly where music is right now in terms of popularity. I mean, there's so much, R&B and I want to say R&B and soul, but you think about somebody like, well, who's big? Like, okay, Drake is big, and who's that other cat? Singular artists, so to speak, where the singer is maybe at the forefront, and all these producers are in the background, and they're not necessarily featured musicians. I think it's more singers with production teams behind them that I would say are been hot for the last few years. But yes, it would be great to see some new talent come up with some great songs that look like they're going to actually have some staying power. So, it's something to look forward to. But
yeah, we actually saw Greta Van Fleet at, where did we see them? 930 Club here in town, and they were good. I completely get the Zeppelin, reference comparison. And it was funny. I watched an interview with Robert Plant, and he was kind of having a chuckle about them, because on some tracks, it's painfully obvious that that's what they're going for, and that's fine. Oh, yeah. That's good on them.
But they've denied it initially, and just saying, "Oh, we're influenced by these other people," and you're like, "How is this not an absolute?" You're using the template,
right?
Right. Of it, and hey, if you got to use a template, it's not a bad one. Not a bad one to use, but there's got to be a point where, we all are influenced by something, but then when you come out of something and you go, well, where's your own voice,
right? Well, and that's where somebody like a band like the Struts, I think, really nails it. Yes, there are comparisons between Luke and Freddie Mercury, but I don't think it ends there. And he's not trying to be Freddie. They're certainly Queen is filtering into their music, but so is Bowie, so is T-Rex, so is all of these sort of R&B and American blues music, in the same way that Zeppelin let those things filter into their music, but then they kind of turned it on their head, right? We went to see them again at 9:30. Come to think of it, and we were blown away. And the audience that was there, you had people there with kids, with little kids, all the way up to, in 20s, 30s, up to, we certainly were not the oldest people in the audience, and rabid fan base. Everybody knew lyrics, everybody was singing. And one of the things that Luke Spiller, if you guys don't know the Struts, go check them out, by the way. They're a phenomenal band. One of the things that Luke is really great at is putting the audience in the palm of his hand and putting the audience where he wants them and getting that audience interaction, so you feel like you're participating, you're there experiencing this thing, not just passively kind of watching it. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's something that is. It just elevates the concert going experience. So, yeah.
And any frontman that can really command and work the audience is a huge boon to any band versus somebody who just kind of stands up there. It's obviously David Lee Roth was somebody like that who could just work the stage and just get everybody excited about,
right,
to the next level.
Not a great singer, but a great presence.
Well, yeah, especially in the latter years. I saw them after the reuniting, and it wasn't the way it was in the beginning. It was like a lounge singer. Right. Who had done this way too many years, and he would just kind of like flippantly, like
Richard Cheese does Van Halen,
like running with the devil, and like two beats behind where it should have been, and I was like, oh my God, this was.
Yeah, he's kind of fallen into that thing that Sinatra did late in his career, where it's that kind of talk singing, where it's just sort of rhythmically talking through the song rather than singing it, because you just can't do it anymore.
And even just ignoring the melodies at some point sometimes too. And anyway, not to rabbit hole down that one, but yeah. There was a time when he was amazing.
So yeah, maybe they're out there. Maybe it's just we haven't seen them yet. I would love to see them, and arguably there's never been a better time in human history to be able to get, or easier, maybe not better, but it's never been easier to get what you create out into the world, right? You can record and mix
absolutely.
and release something with a very small bit of kit now, as opposed to what you needed 20, 30 years ago.
You don't need anybody's permission or backing to get up in the morning, put something on tape, put it up on the web, and then have anybody in the world listen to it that evening.
Right.
It requires no running around and shopping your tapes to the record companies, and then yes, if you want to get money and backing for touring and things like that, and then usually if you do get on a label, then you get put on with a larger artist, that you piggyback on, and they wind up trying to promote you with the larger artist. So there are benefits to it, but in terms of just taking pictures or putting your art out there, anything now, it's like there's desktop publishing, whether it's music, art, whatever, is there's no more walls.
Right. Hey, can I dig into your archive for a second and ask you a question about just what we're talking about that you may or may not have personal experience with? Did you guys have a deal in Martini Ranch? Did you guys have the deal in place already when you were part of the band, or were you there prior to a deal and had to be involved in that process of getting the deal?
Well, the Martini Ranch is a little bit of a complicated thing, because in the first album I was not part of the band per se, even though I was working behind the scenes but I was working on the demos and arranging and stuff.
So were you more of like a hired gun, like a contract player type thing?
Not hired means you get paid.
Oh, one of those kind of deals. All right.
Those. No, but then with some of those tracks we worked on, they took it to Seymour Stein at Sire Records, which is a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, and then got signed off of that, and but they never toured, because it really, in terms of like what the band was, it was, Bill Paxton was in there, kind of just for a popular face and name. He wasn't, if he didn't play any instruments, he didn't sing, he just, he was on a handful of tracks and lent his face to the project.
Right. And the video. That kind of sold the video. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was mostly, just a few, behind the scenes musicians, actually playing the parts. And then after the first album, then they kind of disbanded. Then it was me and Andrew writing for a second album, and then that was just us. But we didn't. It didn't wind up having a second album, even though we had some really, really good songs and all done and ready to go. But
so what was the thinking in, like, when the first album came out, first album was being worked on? How did you guys see yourselves? Did you guys see yourselves as kind of a Devo, as kind of a Talking Heads, or was it just kind of a lark project that, we'll see where it goes? How did you look at that project?
Well, it wasn't a lark. It was. I think the album was just phenomenal, and it would hold up against anything in its time. It had Mark Mothersbaugh and
Yeah.
Bob Casale, producing it, and we had Cindy Wilson at the B-52 singing on it, and just it had a.
So everybody was taking it
few,
seriously.
Yeah, I mean, and so it had a lot of nice names, coming in and doing some cameos on it, and the songs were just really fun and really, really, really well produced. Greg Penny, who produced Katie Lang and a handful of other big names, did most of the production on it, and Bob Casale from Devo worked on one of the tracks that I was arranging, and so they had some good interest in back of it. I don't know why it was never set up to do a tour, because in that day that's how you broadened your base, and
right.
That's
pretty much the only way you could, right?
Yeah. And then it just kind of fell at the wayside. I still wound up doing some film score stuff with Andrew on some other things, and there was this kind of like low profile life of our music. Me and Andrew's working together after that, but he wound up putting out a couple other things, but nothing, but pretty much just as a solo artist. So,
did you guys ever get pressured from Sire or from Warner to do a follow-up without everybody else, to do a second Martini Ranch record instead of just a duo?
No, I wish.
Yeah,
I wish, because then these 6 to 8 songs that we have just sitting in that nobody's ever heard would have seen the light of day, and I loved those songs, but nobody's hearing them. Nobody's going to hear them.
You can't release anything. You wouldn't release anything.
No. I've had that situation in a few musical relationships where somebody doesn't want to do something, and if they want to hold it up, they can just hold it up, and you go, wow, all that work for nothing. So,
right.
It can get complicated, and also then we would have had to put together a band with all new musicians and whatever, because I was pretty much playing all the instruments on everything moving forward that we were working on out for the possible second album, and obviously that wasn't gonna. I'd have to pick an instrument, and then we'd have to hire all the other players.
Right.
If it was going to go like that. So, but it didn't. So, no reason lamenting it.
Yeah, it's interesting how how all this stuff kind of plays out. Yeah, but you're right. The first record was terrific.
I like to live my life and woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Yeah, that's right. The life that could have been. That's funny.
Oh.
Well, I'm going to see if I can play one more tune and maybe see if anybody wants to call in. So can I?
All right.
Can I let you go?
I figured that's what you were doing. That's okay.
Come on,
No,
I can't let you go.
Have a good rest of the show, I guess.
Oh, nice. Come on.
No. Go do your thing, and I will be. I'll hang up, and I will. Listen
I'll be here next week. You can
rest
call. You can call next week too if you want.
Can I call you tonight?
No.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later.
All right. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Wack.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Let's see. Let's play another tune. I'll put some links if I can find them, and maybe Patrick can point me to where some of the Martini Ranch stuff lives. If you guys have never experienced the music of Martini Ranch, it's a fun trip. This is a tune called "On the Way" by Ian Post. We'll be back in a couple minutes. What's the number? Oh gosh, I gotta get better about remembering the number. 202-539-0209, or you can Skype me at Saddoris. What's on your mind? Give me a call. Well, that was fun. That was On the Way by Ian Post. You know, I was thinking about the conversation with Patrick and kind of going in different directions. As some of you may or may not know, I started a big project a few months back where I gave myself kind of an assignment to do 54 paintings, or 53 paintings, actually. I did one extra, but to do 53 paintings by my 53rd birthday, and was able to do it. And what I've found on the back of that is that just going through that process has helped to take my work in a different direction. I've started doing a couple larger pieces. I've started doing more sort of still politically motivated kind of narrative pieces, but I've decided to, rather than making those narratives fictional, I've decided to try and address some of the things going on in the world, at least as I perceive them, and let that be the subject matter of the work. So it's got a hint of truth to it, but it's still going to be in that kind of propaganda vein that some of my other work is in. And I guess how that relates to the conversation with Patrick is, you know, as if you listened last week, or even if you didn't, I've known Patrick for 20 odd years, and I've seen him sort of be able to pivot and kind of change gears creatively on what he happens to be working on. But at the core of it, it's all about the process and expressing himself and trying to live a creative life, whatever that means. And I think one of the things that's been difficult for me historically is accepting that I have something to say, accepting that the work that I produce has value and belongs out in the world, and that while it may not find a huge audience, that's really not important. The most important thing is going through the process of making and being true to yourself and being true to what it is you're trying to say with your art, whatever that art may be, whether you're a photographer, whether you're a writer, whether you're a painter, whether you're, it doesn't really matter. And it's hard to do. It's really hard to do, especially when some of those avenues of getting your work out there have dried up or have gone away for a while in light of kind of where we're at with COVID and not being able to do a lot of shoots in person. And, if you're a portrait photographer, you're probably having to change your game. If you're a wedding photographer or an event photographer, I would imagine you've got to change your game relative to what you did 8-9 months ago. It's difficult, but I think if you're doing what it is that you are curious about and interested in, you'll find a way to make it work. At least I hope that's the way it is. Does anyone out there, this is a good question. My wife just texted me. Yeah, let's open this up again. If you've got some stories to share around this, 202-539-0209. What are some of the things you guys have been doing to stay creative? I know Andre asked me a couple of weeks ago what I was doing, but I get challenged by it just like you do. I have a hard time kind of staying in the zone. Fortunately, I've got a lot of blank canvases down in the studio, so I have no shortage of what to paint on, but I do sometimes have a shortage of what to paint, full stop. So 202-539-0209, or I can play another tune. Or I could have my wife call. That would be fun too. I'm going to check the chat here. Let's see. reminds me of Hacksmith montages. More output makes less pressure on each piece, maybe. Darren, that's a good question. I don't know that it's less pressure on each piece, but I think for me, it's been not painting for a long time or not being creative that starts to atrophy. The ideas seem to be harder to get to for me. One of the other things I've started to try and be better about is journaling, and not journaling like, what I'm doing today, but a journal of ideas of things that I want to explore, either in paintings or in podcasts or, people that I want to approach and talk to. The challenge for me has always been consistency in whatever I'm doing, whether it's producing paintings or whether it's producing podcasts. As much as I love working on process driven, for example, and having conversations with people for process driven, it's hard. The follow through is hard. I have no problem, for example, I have no problem asking people to be on the show, but when they say yes, and to be honest, very few people that I've asked have ever said no, but I fall into this thing of when they do say yes, I sometimes drag my feet on following up with them and actually scheduling that conversation. And I don't know if it's because I think they're just being nice to me by saying yes, or they made a mistake. I'm not sure, but I know that every time, almost every time, that's where I end up dropping the ball. And a couple days turns into a week turns into a month. And what I'm trying to work through, and what I have worked through this with a couple friends, is I've realized that my apprehension could be interpreted as being hurtful or dismissive or something else on the part of the person that I've asked, and they said yes. And then if they don't hear from me for a while, they might get upset with me, or they might figure, that I'm, flaky, or which I guess is entirely true. But I'm trying to be better about it, and I'm trying to keep those feelings in check. And I think the reality is that it comes down to worth. It comes down to self-worth. It comes down to what I think I deserve, which has been more or less at the crux of many of the, sort of existential crises that I've had throughout my life. Is what do I deserve? Do I deserve? It's a case of imposter syndrome that runs deep and has been running deep for years, right? And I know most everybody feels that at some point. I mean, I've spoken to photographers, for example, at the top of their game, who still go through it and still second guess what they're doing. I've spoken to musicians. I've spoken to, other types of artists, writers and it doesn't matter what level, I'm going to put myself in there. It doesn't matter what level we are at, because I'm at some level. I don't know what level I'm at, but I'm certainly at some level. It doesn't matter where we are. We still second guess what we're doing. I don't ever second guess why I'm doing it, but I certainly do second guess what I'm doing. Is it good enough? Do I deserve this? Whatever that even means. And I'm not sure most of the time what that even means, which makes it hard to get past it. It makes it hard to address it. It makes it hard to deal with it if you can't really identify what it is. Does that make sense? I don't know if it does. I hope it does. But I think over the last few years, I've gotten certainly better to a degree. There's still that little voice of resistance in the back of my head going, no, you're just a piece of shit. You don't need to do this. You don't deserve this. Somebody in the chat asked, without the imposter syndrome, would we get any better or just stay at the same level? That's a great question. I would think that we would not get much better. I believe, for me anyway, that I'm always trying to show resistance, that resistance is wrong. And sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Hold on, we got somebody calling in. Hold on, let's see who this is. Oh, I know who this is. Hello, dear.
Hi.
Hi. Can you turn down your radio?
I'm going to jump in here. I can. Yeah.
Because you're going to jump in here? Are you going to put me in my place and tell me what I'm doing wrong?
Well, I'm going to jump in here.
Okay.
Allow me.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
This is the lady of the house, for people who don't know.
Yeah, this is my wife, Adrianne.
So I have some thoughts
Mm-hmm.
that I'm going to share.
I thought you might.
So I think Darren's question is a great one.
Yes.
And it gets to what I was already thinking about. I think that, as with many things, it depends. I think that some people who don't have imposter syndrome may have other motivations
Mm-hmm.
and other things that energize them to keep improving. Whereas I think imposter syndrome for some people without imposter syndrome would have trouble finding or may not be able to find other motivations and other ways to keep and other reasons and other mechanisms to keep improving.
Mm-hmm.
So I think imposter syndrome can be both stifling and can suppress growth and development, or it might be able to be, certain people might be able to sort of channel that,
Right.
To use that to fuel sort of overcoming it or getting out
100%.
of their own way.
I think
So-
I've experienced both of those things, and I think you've seen me experience both of those things.
I do. That actually
You don't have
gets
to be
into
so quick to respond. You could think about it at least.
No, I think about these things often. I just now have an opportunity to speak about it. But no, it actually reminds me of something that you were saying earlier that got me thinking. I think that one of the benefits of practice or any sort of time committed to a pursuit, be it creative or otherwise, is that I think hopefully one of the things that can come out of that is more self-awareness, a sense of, how to work with the brain you have rather than against it.
That's a tough lesson to learn, if I'm being honest. I mean, I fought against it a lot more than I do now.
Right. Well, I think it's true with relationships,
Mm-hmm.
the type of job we might do, where we might live, how we dress. Are we working with or against what we have to work with? And I think it was truly, I'll use the word breakthrough. It was truly a breakthrough for you a few months ago to be working on multiple paintings at once.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that suits you because of how your head works, because you have so much going on at once that I think you having multiple outlets, your whole creative portfolio and world is multidimensional. So it makes sense to me, and I think makes more sense to you, and certainly to see you be sort of energized about having your hands in motion in multiple directions. That
Right.
works for you.
Well, and you've said multiple times since I started that project how my being is different on the back of that.
Yeah, it's true. And I was also thinking about when you were talking about it earlier, it reminded me of one of my oldest and dearest friends just published a book, and he was talking about it the other day and said that the work that his book came out of was partly because of him reflecting and learning how his brain worked and what he needed to be productive, effective, efficient for the way that his brain works in the world. And I think that, I mean, to the point you've made a lot, that I think is such a good one about getting stuff out of your head and either onto the page or onto the canvas or into whatever file. You got to get stuff out so that stuff can keep flowing.
Right.
so that you can sort of work through both your process and your output.
Yeah, I agree.
And can keep learning and growing from that if you're open to doing so.
And I think that translates into, when that happens for too long of a stretch, my personality changes. I have to have somewhere to put all that energy.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of us do.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly notice it in you, but I think that's really common. I mean, it's that even in a totally different context, it's that thing about if you don't talk about stuff that's going on in your head, eventually that stuff comes out somehow,
right,
some way.
Right.
So you either let it come out in useful and productive ways, or else it will find a way to get out.
Right.
And it certainly seems like that is true for creativity, for certainly you, and I would guess a lot of people too. And I think you have gotten better at figuring out what's gonna work for you.
How did Rob do it? Do you know how he kind of came to terms with how his brain? Rob is Adrianne's friend who wrote the book. He came to terms with it?
I do know, because he, one of his sons was identified as having ADHD. Mm-hmm. And as Rob was learning about this and reading about his son's diagnosis, he was like, holy shit, like, that's me too.
Really?
Like,
Wow.
Yeah. And it was this real epiphany.
Wow.
And so as he kept sort of learning about it, and I mean, he's had a very successful and interesting career and stuff, but having that additional insight about himself got him thinking about how he works and how he's effective working, and that basically the coping mechanisms and the strategies that he had developed in order to be more effective in what he does because of how his head works. And so in his business coaching and strategy and all the other stuff, he's put some of those insights together into this book for people whose brains might also work in that way.
Do you get a sense, and I don't know if you've spoken to him about this explicitly, but do you get a sense that would he qualify his work as better now on the back of knowing kind of how he thinks and how he works? Is he changing up process or addressing things that maybe he didn't address beforehand to produce better work?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, he just really used it to, like I said, even though he has had, very successful chapters in his career, but
Sure.
he is all about processes, systems, where he gets stuck and what he needs to do ahead of time to avoid getting stuck and to keep moving forward. And so, yes, he is actioned, to use a probably really annoying word. He's put all of those things into practice, or he has articulated, I was already doing these things because on some level I knew that if I did these things, it would be useful. So I think he was able to sort of think more intentionally about some of those things he had already done and identify additional things to help him be more productive. And because he's a coach and things, he's able to support others in doing that.
Maybe I'll read it. Maybe I'll read the book, because I am, as you know, I am not the best person at recognizing when I'm in and out of state or the state that I should be in. It takes me there. I feel like I'm always playing catch up, like the time has passed for me to stop whatever thing I was doing, and I don't catch myself until it's kind of too late, and I have to go back and sort of clean up some of the damage that I may have done, either internally or externally.
Yeah, back to the point about sort of, that is a great example of one of those fundamental kind of lessons we all have to learn and keep learning, which is self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's around how you work or what clicks for you or what skills or strengths you have or where you need to put some other things in place because there are areas that are harder for you, that sort of know thyself thing
right.
is really, I don't know that we ever get there, but that's always a good thing to come back to, I think, is that place of sort of self-reflection and an opportunity for learning and growing.
Yeah. I can't stop questioning. I can't stop questioning whether A or B. I feel like I'm always getting my eyes checked, better, worse, better, worse, better, worse. In every decision I make, I go through whatever the decision is. I go through that sort of internal, myopathy, mental myopathy, dozens or more times before I'm able to actually move forward on something.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a piece that's hard for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of the downside with having so many interests and so many choices. There's all that stuff about how too many choices can be a challenge. It raises up other challenges, having too many choices.
You experience that with me.
People. Oh, I do.
Don't take me to Noodle King. There's too many choices.
Right. But I think that, something else I wanted to say is that I think it would be great for people who listen, who either live or in real time, to send you ideas about what they would like you to talk about or questions that they have either for you or other people.
Love it.
So what's the email address where they can reach you?
talkback@jeffreysaddoris.com. Or you can find me on Instagram and Twitter @JeffreySaddoris. That's actually a really great idea. And it's because, as you know, this was probably the hardest show that I've done so far. Because there was that dead spot where I didn't prepare as much as I usually or like to do. I didn't have something ready to go. And I'm kind of shit at tap dancing. And just sort of filling the air. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do this show, is because I'm not very good at that part of it. And I want to give myself the opportunity to flex that muscle and get better at it. But I'm sure that if I were to play this back tomorrow, I would cringe at a good 20, 30 minutes of it. Because it just... What do you mean, ugh?
You will not. You will not. There's good stuff. This is all part of the process.
Well, and that's the thing, right? You have one of the best lessons. If I can brag on you for a minute, one of the best lessons that I have learned from you is something that you say often, and that is that it all counts. And that's a hard one for me to get to. It was a hard one for me to get to because I'm very sort of fastidious about things. I have very definite parameters about my work and what qualifies as good and what doesn't qualify as good. And that's always a moving target because what is good, right? You've heard me talk about that 1,000 times, that good is this moving target. And it's moving, we're moving, our perception is moving, our everything's moving, and you're trying to throw a dart and hit this thing. And that's difficult. But to go back to your lesson, the idea that all of it counts because it's all pushing you somewhere. It's all pushing you or leading you or nudging you or however you need to say it, it's all getting filtered and then sort of spit back out. So, I don't know.
Yeah, you do know. Yeah, I think, I mean, there's some really interesting kind of comments and observations in the chat too around work styles and working in short bursts on multiple things. I think that does work great for some people.
Yeah.
I think other people need to sort of lock and load and immerse themselves in, deeply in something for a while. And yeah, you can lose perspective, but sometimes that can be that immersive experience, I think can get you to a new place, and then you can surface a little bit and take a breather.
Right. I can't remember the last thing that I've done like that. The last super immersive deep dive project that I've done. Because all the paintings, I feel like that was a short burst relative to, some of the other things that I've done.
Yeah, I think, and there's all this stuff around what kinds of stuff energizes you. Mm-hmm. Some people get really energized by going deep on a single thing for a stretch. And some people need that to then sort of come out and, look at the landscape from where they came out.
Right.
And other people need to, they need to pop their head out frequently to sort of like check where they are. Yeah. So I think that getting a sense of what works for you and what sort of energizes you and what helps you, is probably a valuable thing for kind of any creative and even outside.
Especially
creativity.
now.
I think that's a useful thing to be coming back to. Yeah.
Yeah. When that's another hugely dramatic change that you have to sort of react to and pivot around.
Yeah, and I think that those kinds of questions or self-reflective processes are especially great when sort of if it feels like there are many things outside of our control. Mm-hmm. If things feel very disorienting or very unsteady, it's that exercise of coming back to center and like what are the basics? What's the why behind this? I mean, you said a minute ago that you rarely question why you do something. The why is clearer to you,
right? And
I think that is a kind of creative anchor that you can and do come back to. But I think those fundamental things become even more valuable in a context or during a time that's feeling otherwise pretty chaotic or out of control, or with a lot of things that we don't really have as much of a hand in.
Right.
So.
Fielding. Insightful as always. Thoughts. No, your thoughts are good.
Just some thoughts.
They're good. They're good. We talk about a lot of this, and you are such a. I think one of the great things about our dynamic is you are such a strategic thinker, and I am not. That. I think I'm better because I've learned and I've watched what you do, and I've tried to do some of the things that you do. I mean, you've gotten me better about calendaring things and setting reminders or making sure that I know what I need to get done or should get done. And I think that has helped tremendously because I don't just spend the day then going, well, what should I be doing? Because I could talk myself into or out of working on anything. But if I say, okay, for these 3 hours or 2 hours or whatever it is, I'm down in the studio painting, then I've got to come up and edit this show, whatever that show is. I've got to record, here, there, everywhere. And I think moving forward with the Calendly integration where I can even sort of remove that, not remove it, that's the wrong way to put it, but I can have this sort of digital assistant with booking guests for process driven or a day's work, where, I talked earlier about where I kind of stumble after I've approached someone to be on the show and then they say yes, and then I don't want to make the ask of their time. That's what it boils down to. And I didn't say that earlier, but I don't feel like I deserve to make the ask of their time, which is stupid because they've already said yes. They've already said, yeah, I'd love to do it. Let's do it. What do you want to do? And then I go, you don't want to do this.
Right.
I would make a horrible car salesman. You don't want the leather. It's not.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's been valuable for you to think on and recognize some of the places where you get stuck,
right?
And to put systems, processes, and tools in place to help prevent you from getting stuck or to help you getting unstuck.
I think so.
So that you can, yeah.
I mean, I can literally now, now that this thing, and it's just gotten sorted within the last, well, it got sorted out mostly today, really. But if I approach somebody about asking somebody to come on PD and they say, yeah, I'd love to do it, I can now just say, great, go here, pick a day that works for you, and it'll show, where I'm available. They can book it. They'll get the email confirmation. And I'll follow up saying, okay, you need this, this, and this. And if there's anything, whatever that is. But the mechanics of then making the ask, I've removed from me. I've almost removed my ability to not ask, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, it does. And I don't think that you had talked about Calendly before, so this is a nice opportunity for you to mention that.
Okay, so yeah,
that you have.
Well, we're running a little bit late.
Have found this tool.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. You just explained what you're going to use it for too. But another example of something that you found to improve your process or to make your process kind of more effective.
Yeah, and I think that will help dramatically. That's my hope anyway, because there are I can think of 4 or 5 people off the top of my head right now that I owe a follow-up to, and it's not like Bob with a camera or Sally with a paintbrush. I mean, these are you've heard of all of these people.
Yes, capital P people.
Capital P people.
I'm just kidding.
No, but yeah, thank you as always.
Right on. We are running long, but see, I finally called, and then we get on a roll. So
that's all right.
That's what you get.
We get what we get, and it's always good stuff. And I'm sure at least a few people are going to write in and go, "You should just do a show with Adrianne."
No. The callers are excellent, and I am excited to have more people chiming in on stuff. But people should let you know what they would love to talk about or hear you talk about, or if they have questions. I think that would be fun.
Yeah, and does the time work? Is in choosing 5 o'clock? I'd like to address this. In choosing 5 p.m., my thinking was it's not as late as I would want to do it. I originally thought about doing this as a later show, like a late night show, because it's sort of inspired by the shows that I used to listen to, in high school and college, that kind of thing. But in choosing 5 o'clock Eastern time, I was hoping that would be a time that would be okay for people in the UK and Europe. It's 10 o'clock, which is a little bit late. But if I go much earlier on this end, then it gets earlier on the West Coast of California. People are, right in the middle of their day. So anyway, the short version is, does 5 p.m. work for you for this time, or do you have other suggestions that I can think about? Let me know. Talkback at jeffreysaddoris.com, or you can find me on Instagram or Twitter at jeffreysaddoris. So we got one. Sam, question for a future show. How do I feel about collaboration on creative works? That's a really great question. You seem to spark off others' conversation. Does that translate to other work for you? That's a great question, and as Adrianne just chimed in, it's a big question. Let's tackle that next time. I will write it down, or I will take a screenshot of it there, and we'll tackle that next time. So until then, thank you for being here. I know it was a little rough in some spots, but this is part of the process. We're figuring all this stuff out, and I appreciate you being here. I'm trying to get better at this. It's one, again, as I said earlier, it's one of the reasons I wanted to do this, is because I feel like it's a big challenge for me. But it's a lot of fun, and I definitely want to keep doing it, and I want to build this community. That's pretty much the focus of this, is building a community where we can talk about some things that maybe we can't talk about other places. Maybe you don't feel comfortable, just throwing them out there into the ether, and this can be a space where we can talk to each other about what we're going through, and by extension, then the people that hear it, maybe it helps them with the things that they're going through, or it inspires them to go look up a photographer, or listen to a band, or go to a movie, or whatever it is that we happen to talk about. So thank you, Patrick, for calling in. If you're still listening, I always love talking to you. And thank you, Adrianne. And thanks to everybody in the chat. It was really good. So until next week, thanks for being here. I'll talk to you on the next one.